welcome, and thanks for participating in this. And I thought it would be a good way to start by just asking you to introduce yourself for our viewers.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Dan Moses. I'm a young attorney at Hinckley Allen here in Boston. I've been in the construction industry for about 15 years, but just practicing as an attorney for the last 6 months or so.
So I asked Dan to participate in this because I asked him to do an assignment in one of our Young Designers, Young Contractors program. There's a tool that we use for what happens in a group discussion that enables you to clarify the mess, that's going on as you're trying to ask yourself what's really happening. We don't seem to be accomplishing anything. So can you describe, just go back and try to reconstruct what I asked you and the 4 or 5 other people to do in the exercise that we were running?
Sure. So it was a fun little team building experiment that we had. We had a number of materials to use with the objective of basically creating a simple structure that would hold a marshmallow as high as possible. So we were given a certain number of spaghetti pieces. We were given a certain measure of tape, a certain measure of string in a marshmallow, and we had to collaborate, use our collective ingenuity and talent to try to first conceptualize a structure that would hold up a marshmallow and ideally hold it up higher than any of the other groups. I had to sort of record in real time whether the comments being offered were accepted by the group and would be implemented in the process, and those would be identified as a develop or a D. If the idea proffered was not accepted by the group or sort of countered, then that would be identified with a K for kill. And if the idea came out but just didn't really go anywhere, wasn't acknowledged or furthered or killed, then that was a plop or a P.
Yeah. So it's a pretty friendly exercise usually because it's a little silly. People are building a tower out of sticks of spaghetti and a marshmallow on the top. And actually, if you're interested in the details of this exercise, it's a famous TED Talk, and you can just Google marshmallow towers or go in the search bar on TED and look up marshmallow towers team building, and you'll find a detailed instruction for this. So it's groups of 4s and 5s, and I asked to have one person from each group come and be in this note taker scorekeeper role. So you're keeping scores of develops and kills and plops for about 18 minutes. So what happened while you were keeping score? What kinds of things were you noticing?
So I noticed a few things. We had an interesting group dynamic. So we had an architect, we had somebody who was in estimating or pre-construction. We had a project manager, and then I was a part of the group. So I'm a lawyer now, but like I mentioned previously, my background is pretty varied. I've worn a lot of hats in the construction industry. So we all brought sort of unique talents to this group challenge. So I found that for the most part, particularly early in the effort, the conversation was really either develops or plops, and I looked at the spread of D, K, and P, and I noticed that there were sort of three distinct periods. And so the first period I found that really there were mostly develops or pushes. The time pressure was not significant at that point. We had really the whole project schedule in front of us at that point. And so a fair amount of time was spent on just developing the concept.
Could you give an example or two if you can remember or vaguely remember, like what would be an example of a develop that you noticed?
Initially, we were saying, could we get really high by anchoring off of the side of the table? And so there was some discussion there, and we ended up going with that with that style of design.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of develops there. Well, how would we do that?
By develops, you mean like people, what would people do?
Well,
Like
they would
one
build
person
on
would
the,
say,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, no, so they would build on the original idea. Okay, well, if we are going to tape on the side, how are we going to deal with sort of lateral forces trying to go off the table? Okay, well, we need to have some sort of anchor point that's tied back into the center of the table. So those kinds of discussions, and we really developed those sort of early on.
Yeah. So the develops were people adding more to the few ideas that were out there, and developing that idea by adding more things to it, more connected ideas, more possibilities.
Right.
And you said that happened like earlier on in the discussion.
Yes.
But then
so then period 2 was really predominantly develops with a couple of kills towards the end. And so this was really more towards our initial build period, where we've now got our design fairly well conceptualized and communicated, and we're beginning to actually, put the spaghetti pieces out there, taping them. What are we going to do with the string? Okay, well, yeah, maybe we could use the string as a counterpoint. I don't know how that's going to work. Are we going to cut the string in half and use 2 pieces? Why don't we try with 1 piece? And in conversations like that, the kills started to come in as the time was winding down. And so we felt an increased amount of pressure.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
Well, that would just lead into that third period.
Yeah. Any trophy kills? Memorable ones?
I recall that one of the challenges in building the type of structure that we were trying to build was the joints. And so we were trying to figure out, okay, how do we secure these joints? And while one person was trying to tape up the joints, another person was sort of pulling on the structure in a different direction, and it was sort of undermining the ability to tape the joints up. And so I think there's some discussion about, okay, hang on, you have to stop pulling on it over here, because if you're pulling on it over here, then I'm failing on my end over here.
Yeah.
And so in that third period, that's really where there was the highest proportion of kills to develops, right? In my last period, I think I've got 3 kills and 3 develops. And so this was, okay, now the time pressure is really on. Maybe we're at, minute 16 or so. We've only got a couple of minutes left. We're looking around the room and we see everybody else has kind of got a stable structure and it's moving up. And then we're saying, well, man, I don't know. So we're starting to test our structure a little bit. We put a marshmallow up temporarily to see if it's going to hold. No, it's not holding. So now we gotta go and refine on the fly. And now you see a little bit more assertion by individuals that previously were really not all that vocal. Okay, your idea is clearly not working here. I need to be a little bit more assertive and sort of take over, or else we're going to fail.
Yeah. Okay. And then I have a couple of questions for you about the reveal, like the point at which you presented your scorekeeping to the group. What happened then? How did they react? What were some of their comments?
So, and we found, similar to what I've just sort of described, is that there was a good amount of collaboration. There was a willingness to respectfully treat each other's ideas, contemplate them, and try to include them if they made sense. On the fail side, we determined that we didn't really make a very good use of the materials. We could have doubled up on certain, joints or certain, building components that might have strengthened the structure. So that was good sort of feedback period. And then we shared group by group sort of what the results were. And the group that I was with didn't seem particularly fazed by the results. They agreed, that what I recorded tended to be consistent with what they experienced.
Yeah. then I have a couple other questions for you about having kept the score. Have you found yourself noticing those same kinds of things in other meetings after that experience?
Yeah, so the process of recording contemporaneous with actually participating in a meeting is an interesting thing. It distracts you, I think, a little bit from fully engaging in the meeting. But where I found that the develop, kill, plot sort of mentality to a meeting is helpful is, at least in hindsight, after a meeting, it will help you gauge, okay, was that meeting successful? What was the sort of the tenor of the conversation while it was going through, and how can we approach this meeting a little bit better the next time that we have a similar type of a meeting. It would probably be better to do that actively, to actively think through those things, but that just takes an effort to go into a meeting prepared to evaluate it while you're participating.
Well, it's hard to do it in meetings at work without introducing that you're going to do it, and kind of asking people's permission if that's okay, and giving them a sense of if they're going to use it. Have you found yourself noticing it happening in other conversations outside work? Have you noticed being killed or plopped with any of your own ideas that you floated?
Maybe in personal relationships, a little bit more of a, develop, kill, where there's less of a professional component to a conversation. There's a bit more frankness, oh, that's a good idea, or not so much, is more apparent, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's really helpful. That's really helpful. Yeah. And so you were comfortable in the role of, because you were kind of in an intervener's role, in the role of a change agent, working with a group, being the participant observer, where you've been given license to observe and participate, and to reveal the scores. And with this particular exercise, it's a way to do it that's usually not really controversial. And I guess kind of implicit in what you're saying is that you're noticing more about the process of discussion as a result of being in the scorekeeper role. Am I overextending that?
No, I think that's a fair assessment.
So what kinds of things do you see now typically in meetings a little bit more clearly?
Well, it's the reception of an idea, and whether or not a contributor to a meeting is being received, the message that they're trying to contribute and get across. I think plops in particular are instructive, because it almost shows an indifference towards the speaker, and I think that is something that a good manager needs to be cognizant of. That if somebody is trying to contribute to a meeting, you shouldn't just bypass it, because you don't think that it's adding immediate value. You should spend a little bit of time to address, the speaker, and try to understand why that speaker is contributing what they are contributing.
And for our viewing audience, can you describe in a little bit more detail exactly what a plop, this very technical term, what a plop is in a group discussion?
Yeah, so I think in a dynamic discussion where you are working with a team, let's say you're trying to solve a particular problem, and it's almost, let's say it's a sort of a brainstorming kind of a meeting, or there's a point that's open for discussion, and you have an individual that is contributing toward that discussion, hoping to further it, but their contribution, for whatever reason, doesn't become a part of the conversation, a meaningful part of the conversation. The comment is there, it's for evaluation and sort of something for the team to chew on, but the team just continues on. Maybe somebody else speaks in close proximity to the plopped individual, and
Yeah.
and the conversation moves on without ever having
Yeah.
really used that information.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. That I think that's extremely destructive, and it's harder to pin down unless you're like really paying attention to it, because there's no anger that goes with it. It's just like you put an idea out there and you're quietly ignored. And then the discussion just moves on to the next person, and you're looking there like, did I just say something? I mean, I could have sworn I said something. How come nobody's reacting? But when you keep score of it, how many plops did you get, by the way? Do you remember in your scorekeeping?
I only had 3, so I had
Yeah.
15 develops, 6 kills, and 3 plops.
Yeah,
So
that's pretty good.
yeah, I would, the precision of these numbers is, may leave some to be desired, just
Yeah.
because you're both actively participating in the project and trying to record contemporaneously. But I really felt that there were more develops and kills, far more develops. And I think that is a factor as much of our group dynamic as anything else.
Yeah. So that was great, Dan. That was really very, very good. Thank you. Thank you. Your detailed observations and thoughtful comments, I think, will be really helpful for viewers of this video as hopefully they consider how to use this develop, kill, plop scorecard. And if you're one of those people who does that, I would love to hear your story also. And we can add it to the What Happened When I Tried It playlist. You can reach me at Bill Ronco, at wronco@gatheringpace, GATHERINGPACE.com.